Today I wanted to talk about the social experiments happening right before our very eyes. And so many of us are unaware. They've emerged in our worlds. And I have to say, I was one of the first people to take on one of the biggest social experiments that's happening around the globe. And it's called AirBnB. I had recently decided to change my life, and in 2010-11 I headed off to South America, to Ecuador, and I really considered living there, and was there to suss out that possibility. And while I was there, I came across a number of gringos who had discovered Airbnb, some of which who were looking to buy properties and rent them on Airbnb. And of course, it was just getting going then. And I thought, wow, look at the freedom this offers. And of course, having a house in Regina, I thought this might be an option for the future. In 2012, I returned to Regina, and I did not have a source of income. I'd been away for a while. And what I did have was rooms. And in my town, there's an oil refinery. So we get shutdowns. And at that time, it was before Airbnb just started. And of course, I was renting out my house before I came home. And it happened to be refinery workers. A bunch of guys had rented it. And they wanted to stay when I got home. And I thought, well, what the hell? They've already been here. I was in South America, and actually I ran a hostel, or several, while I was there. And renting or sharing my space, I have a house. I thought, what the heck? And that's how I kind of got going on it all. I never thought for a million years I'd ever share my space, but it was money, and not bad money at that. And quite honestly, I never see these people. When they come into town to go to work, they leave at 6 a.m. and then they come home at 6, have a shower and leave and go eat, and then come home and go to bed. I had very little interaction with them. So in 2012, I got onto Airbnb, and of course, at that time, it was just getting moving, particularly in my region, in Saskatchewan. And in fact, there was a suite listed, and I was the first room in my town, a place to share rooms in a house. And it blew up from that. It took a while for Airbnb to catch up, and it wasn't really until 2015 that I was able to make a living 100% on my room rentals. And then I started taking on other properties for friends. I can never help myself with a little business opportunity. And what I liked about it was the fact that I got to stay home and research and do what I love. I took on the odd promotional contract. I was not pressured to go and do a job I didn't want to do. Plus, I was discovering that being over 40 was a real detriment for a woman, particularly one who'd been self-employed since she was 27, meaning nobody wanted me, straight up. And the ones that didn't want to pay. And I thought, screw all of you, and I will just do my own thing. Learn to live with less. It's all good. I've been doing it for a while. I've never been afraid of the struggle. And quite honestly, I'm not a stuffed person. I haven't had a TV in 13 years. So no skin off my back. What I actually gained over that 10 years was the wealth of experience of being involved and watching the Airbnb social credit system roll out. The social credit system that cast me out. after being the first host here in Regina that shared her own home. It was an experience, I can tell you, was absolutely demeaning, but not to mention how they did it, because at the beginning it was all about us hosts. They cared about our safety, and what I believe I signed on to with that was the knowledge of who was in my home, shall I ever need it. And let's just say by the end, when I started asking for that information, particularly when it came to two men who had booked to stay in my house, and I had a bad feeling about, and they turned out to be child traffickers and wanted both of them for attempted murder, 6 months apart in actually 2 different properties. And thank you, my spidey senses. AirBnB, you are responsible for helping me tweak my spidey senses, because after 700 people through your doors, you get a pretty good sense of people right off the get-go, particularly when it comes to the emailing and communication. And that's what it was predicated on, but it changed. And what I found was that Airbnb was wrapping us into the belief that we were safe, yet exposing us more and more to criminal activity, unsavory guests, and unsavory people, and unsavory men that like to prey on women. And the worst part about it is when you said anything, you became a problem, because that is how social credits work. It's all about social harmony. And if a woman is to stand up for herself, exert the right of free speech in the country she lives, Airbnb has their own rules. And they will literally just cut you off in midstream. It's sad, because the type of guest that used Airbnb right at the beginning was amazing, and I couldn't have been a better promoter of Airbnb, and I'm obviously partially responsible for those over 700 listings in my city. Yet it's a backdoor for criminals, because this is what Airbnb has done. Over the years with this social credit program, they also slowly changed the nature of what we were doing. The beginning was all about not competing with hotels, because we were renting rooms in our homes. It was a personal experience. At the beginning, I got a lot of tourists who were traveling through, and a lot of people who probably had told me in the past they looked at traveling to Canada, and because of the long distances, they couldn't really afford it with hotels, but Airbnb changed all that and really opened up the world to tourism. I heard a lot of funny stories over the years on Airbnb, and of course I'm going to talk a lot about Airbnb. This isn't going to be our only conversation, because they are the example of how the social credit system actually came to be. And I don't believe Airbnb just came to be about the air mattresses on the floor, the cute little story, because I'm finding all sorts of little intersections in other places of the world, like China, that I believe had more of a hand in Airbnb than we would like to believe, and the globalists. Because Airbnb is part of this future vision of 2030 that the people touting the circular economy want to believe. And of course, these are big financiers from all over the world. In fact, the circular economy is a real focus of the World Economic Forum this year. No, they weren't discussing democracy there. They were discussing circular economy. And circular economy has a bit of a problem with democracy. Circular economy has a bit of a problem with freedom. Circular economy is essentially socialism, but communism. We've fashioned the word communism out, and today it just about has these connotations of, let's not talk about that. That's something that we don't have, the China. And most people don't even relate communism to China anymore because they seem so open and technological. It's communism. And the circular economy cannot exist in a democracy. It's about tapping out the entrepreneur. Because the supply chains are going to start limiting, and this is what it is all about, essentially. All of this choice in our world that we have, that they've tantalized us with, no. They'll look back in the future and know that we had a lot of fun while the crazies watched and observed us and our behavior with all the little toys they threw in our pen. Over the next few weeks, as we break down the vision to 2030 and beyond, because we know Africa has a 2063 plan, we need to look at actually who's putting all of this together. And that's all the people that we never talk about. It's in the news, but it's the people at the World Economic Forum, the people presenting. Why is the focus on circular economy? China is rolling out their circular economy as we speak. And in fact, the 11 free trade zones all throughout China that seem to somehow follow the virus, and the SO2 levels, and the fact that they want to take money out of circulation because it will spread virus. It's so important that we can look between the lines and then lift up the book and look under, not just in the cover that they're giving us, because we have to look at what they're presenting and how we're going to get there. And in any great revolution, as they're calling this, there's great pain. And some people are left out of the equation. And I believe who's going to get left out of this equation is the middle class. And that's what's happening. The middle class who used to own homes will no longer own. We will no longer own cars. In fact, the circular economy wants us to lease everything. All tied in. All one. Those of us with the benefit of experience and living through generations, through decades, we have the ability to see ahead where the kids do not, and this is what they're counting on, by making the history of where we live and how we used to do things silly. It's exactly how they're doing it. In any case, I hope I've given you a little bit of time today to think about where it's all headed and what these programs mean. And in fact, that all this technology and supposed freedom seems to come at a cost, and the cost has been, in fact, participation in social experiments right before our very eyes without our knowledge or consent. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I'd love to have you. And of course, Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for joining me.